This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Brat, don't let me catch up to you. Otherwise, you'll regret being born in this world. The blood god kept roaring behind him, and he was so angry that he almost exploded. When he saw that Yunxiao only had the cultivation base of a one-star martial supreme, he felt that he had been played, and he was extremely ashamed. But, he did not know that Yunxiao had also taken the blood fiend by accident. Thinking that it was a premeditated act, he kept threatening, "I'll skin you and eat you in a pot. When I'm peeling you, I'll cut you with my spine and cut the skin on your back into two halves. I'll slowly separate the skin and muscles with the knife and tear them apart like butterflies spreading their wings. Then, I'll spread some sesame oil and scallions on you." A long string of horrifying words came out of his mouth, accompanied by the sound of grinding teeth, which sounded eerie and terrifying. But, Yunxiao could not help but laugh and say, "After saying so much, you forgot to add salt. How about this, I'm Li Yunxiao, and I'll bring salt for myself. I'm angry, damn it." Seeing that he couldn't intimidate the other party, the scion was so angry that he began to scream. Seeing that the other party was extremely young, he thought that a few simple scares would have an effect, but he didn't expect to be ridiculed instead. He was so angry that he burned his blood essence and rushed up, his speed increasing by a few notches. Yunxiao was taken aback, but he quickly swallowed medicinal pills and ran as fast as he could. The distance between them was maintained at a few thousand meters, but the gap was shrinking. The demon dragon scolded, "You idiot. You've angered him again, haven't you? We don't know how much of this area belongs to the Blood God Palace. Let's see how you're going to escape now. He has enough blood essence to catch up to you." Yunxiao was also very depressed. He did not want the blood fiend at all, and he could not explain it now. He could only get rid of the blood god first and then slowly think of a way. Suddenly, he fixed his eyes on the ground in front of him. A faint, strange force spread out like smoke, giving off a desolate feeling of the ancient firmament. Yunxiao was slightly taken aback, and he suddenly plunged down, causing a bolt of lightning to fall from the sky. The blood god frowned slightly. Yunxiao was heading in the direction of the burial ground, and he felt that something was wrong. But at the thought of the blood fiends, he could not care less and followed closely behind. "Who are you? How dare you barge into the burial land? Do you not want to live?" The guardian below appeared and struck at Yunxiao's thunderbolt in shock and anger. It turned out to be a Nine Heavens martial emperor. The spirit energy above the burial land was sucked dry by his palm, then suddenly burst out. Yunxiao frowned and suddenly teleported himself as far as he could. Although he had dodged the first attack, he was still within the palm force. His skin flickered with a golden light, and the power of the primordial astral wind whistled around him, protecting him in the middle. But, he still could not withstand the power of the palm, and his body was shaken to the point that divine light flickered as he struggled to hold on. He couldn't stop for even a moment at this moment. He could only rush over by force. Otherwise, the clones of the blood god behind him would arrive in the blink of an eye, and that would be really fatal. "Zhong Runyan, stop him." The blood god's roar was deafening, and he looked overjoyed. Although Zhong Runyan's palm force had failed to stop Yunxiao, it had broken his thunder escape technique, allowing him to rush nearly 1,000 meters in half a breath and almost reach him with a kick. "Palace Master." Zhong Runyan was shocked. Although he had seen that it seemed to be people from his own sect chasing after them, he would never have thought that it was the blood god himself. He was horrified and said hurriedly, "Yes." At the same time, he was greatly shocked. Yunxiao had completely passed through his palm force and was falling toward the boundless burial ground. No one knew how many years this burial land had existed for and how many secrets it contained. The most unique feature was that there seemed to be a seal inside, and no one could use their divine sense. If Yunxiao managed to sneak in, it would be really difficult to find him. At the thought of this, Zhong Runyan did not dare to delay any longer. In a flash, he turned into a bloody light and rushed at Yunxiao. The power of Emperor Qi spread out from his body, and a huge seal appeared in his hand, sealing the surrounding space and forming a huge natural barrier. Without saying a word, Yun Shao immediately threw out the Divine Realm tablet, and the power of 3 territories spread out, especially the Earth territory, which was instantly exerted to the extreme. The infinite gravity crushed the entire space, and Zhong Runian's hand seals were also shattered by the spatial power. Zhong Runian's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Although his energy barrier was extremely large and dispersed its power, it was by no means something that a mere martial venerable could break. The power on the Divine Realm tablet even made him feel extremely depressed and uncomfortable. Well done, Zhong Runian. Just as Yun Shao broke the barrier and was about to rush down, the blood god's voice rang in his ear, and he trembled violently. Then, he saw a blood-red light shoot into the sky. The bright world of heaven and earth in front of him had completely turned into a sea of blood. Although Zhong Runian had only stopped Yun Shao for a few breaths, it was enough. The clone of Blood God's first move was to use the world of Blood Sea. He would first absorb the other party into it and then slowly torture and kill them. On the way here, he had burned off a lot of his most essential blood, and was already so angry that he could not take it anymore. For a moment, he did not know how to torture Yun Shao. He only felt that all the means he had used in the past were too light and could not vent the resentment in his heart. Palace Master, this person is Bayan. Zhong Runian wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and flew over to ask. Fortunately, the blood god had arrived in time, or he would not have been able to trap Yun Shao. He could not figure out who would need the blood god to attack in person. What's wrong with this kid? What's going on? The scion of the blood god snorted coldly. Suddenly, a ball of sword light burst out from his world of blood sea. A ray of light broke through the sea of blood and rushed towards the land of bones, causing his entire body to tremble. He couldn't react to the unbelievable reality for a moment. He turned around and roared repeatedly, burning his blood essence again and chasing after the blood god. Young Master Yun, you go first. I'll hold them off. Mo Xiaochuan stopped in midair and turned around. He held the heaven-shaking demon-slaying sword horizontally in front of him, and waves of sword qi shot out. He looked at the sword expressionlessly as he slowly unsealed it. It was him who had broken the sea of blood with the power of his sword and escaped with Yun Shao. Yun Shao chuckled and said, "Your heaven-shaking demon-slaying sword is refined by gathering the righteous qi of heaven and earth. It's the nemesis of evil arts like theirs. I'll help you again and teach this demon a lesson. Don't think we're easy to bully." He opened his immemorial heavenly eye, and the thunder of heavenly tribulation flickered in his pupils. Although Yun Shao could transform into thunder, it was still far inferior to the heavenly tribulation of a 9th-tier mystic artifact. The power of the heavenly tribulation had destroyed peak martial venerables in the Xiaohou family with each move. Nurture lightning. Yun Shao cried out as his body turned into thunder. The tribulation thunder in his heavenly eye gathered on his right palm, gradually growing larger and stronger. The surrounding thunder flashed and illuminated the sky with a purple-green color. At the same time, the immemorial astral wind on his left hand turned into a vortex that continued to expand. The fire phoenix shadow appeared between his brows and was about to rush out at any moment. That's Ying Luo. The blood god suddenly came to a stop with a solemn look on his face. He did not understand how they had suddenly turned into 2 people. More importantly, the aura of the 2 men gave him a sense of danger. Although Yun Xiao's thunderbolt whirlwind made him look more flamboyant, what he really paid attention to was the silent Mo Xiaochuan next to him, especially the sword in his hand, which made his heart palpitate. Good, you're finally not running away. You dare to confront me directly. I can't help but say that you're ignorant and fearless. The clone of blood god raised his right hand. A massive blood shadow rushed into the sky and condensed into the shape of a huge blood slave. It opened its mouth and roared as it pounced down. Its voice was gloomy and terrifying, shaking the entire burial land's martial artists. They looked up at the sky with infinite horror, and their hearts kept trembling. The mortal world gazes at Ying Hao Yu. Mo Xiaochuan shouted as he drew his sword, releasing a wave of sword qi. Yunxiao suddenly cried out, thunder blessing, rotation of wind and fire. The power of lightning in his right hand suddenly caught up with the sword light, and at the same time, the true phoenix flame whizzed out. Immediately after, the great pinwheel in his left hand also spun upwards. In the sea of sword chi in front of him, 3 elemental powers suddenly appeared. They were dazzling and their power instantly multiplied. Boom! The blood slave of the blood god was blown up by the sea of swords and its entire body was shattered. Zhong Runyan, who was watching from a distance, was completely dumbfounded. He couldn't imagine that there were countless other martial artists who were cultivating or searching for treasures in the burial land who were just as stunned as him. They all looked at the strange phenomenon in the sky in horror. You think you've won? Just as the two of them thought that they were safe and were about to fly down, the blood god's cold voice suddenly rang in their ears. They were both shocked. Mo Xiaochuan's eyes flashed, and he turned around to stab in the direction of the voice. Blood splattered everywhere, but he did not see anyone. Yunxiao's 3 northern sky-cold swords emerged as well, forming a sword diagram around him and sweeping in all directions. Bang! The 3 swords were suppressed by a force at the same time. The formation showed signs of collapse, and the sea of swords was filled with red light and blood. An abnormal sense of danger appeared in his heart and spread out uncontrollably. He was suddenly shocked and wanted to escape by teleportation. However, he found that the space had been frozen, and it was difficult to even move. Ha! Open! Break! Mo Xiaochuan suddenly shouted and turned his sword force around. A sharp, shrill sound rang out as the great emperor pressure around Yunxiao shattered one by one. Then, he suddenly expanded his spiritual power and teleported away. The moment he moved away, a blood shadow appeared in the original space. The clone of Blood God appeared with a furious expression and slapped Mo Xiaochuan. Mo Xiaochuan's expression turned serious. The cultivation of the Blood God was far higher than Su Danhe's. He raised his sword to block the attack. The bloody palm hit the sword, and a large amount of sword chi was shot up. The sound of a treasured sword buzzing in the air could be heard. The blood god's palm was shockingly powerful. The blood light actually passed through the sword and shattered Mo Xiaochuan's defense, landing on his chest. Pfft. Mo Xiaochuan's body trembled violently and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He was sent flying along with his sword. The space twisted at that moment. Yunxiao's body turned into a thunderbolt as he grabbed Mo Xiaochuan and teleported away again, heading straight for the burial ground below. You want to escape? A cold light flashed in Blood God's eyes. The strength of these 2 people was too terrifying. They could actually destroy his blood slave with their combined strength. Even if it wasn't for the blood fiends, he couldn't let them go. He turned into a bloody light and chased after them. Boom! Yunxiao put Mo Xiaochuan back into the Divine Realm tablet, then transformed into a thunderbolt and fell down. Dust was immediately stirred up on a mountain below, and a huge black pit was formed. The clone of Blood God landed on the mountaintop in an instant, and his face grew nervous. As soon as he entered the restrictive zone, his divine sense was completely useless. He kept his eyes fixed on the ground, afraid that Yunxiao would escape, which was like a fish entering the sea, and it would be even more difficult to pursue him. Zhong Runyan, the person in charge of the burial site, landed as well. He stared at the black pit and said with a solemn expression, "Palace Master, could he have escaped from below?" The blood god's expression changed and he flew into the pit. A huge explosion followed, and there was a feeling of the earth shaking. A beam of blood light rushed up. It was the blood god. His face was extremely gloomy and he roared, "Damn it! Not only did he escape, but he also left a trap for me to step into. Zhong Runyan, do you have any way to find a person in this burial ground?" Zhong Runyan looked troubled and said, "Palace Master, the terrain here is complex and there are all kinds of strange phenomena. Divine sense is completely useless. If he really wanted to hide inside for his entire life, we really couldn't do anything about it, but we can issue a reward for all the cultivators and treasure hunters inside to work for us. Yes, this is the only way out. Immediately go and issue a reward." Whoever finds the traces of those two and helps us capture them will be rewarded with a 9th-tier profound armament. If anyone can take their heads, they will be rewarded with 3 9th-tier profound armaments. The scion of the blood god said calmly, startling Zhong Runyan. Palace master, isn't this reward a little too much? The scion of the blood god looked at him coldly and said, those 2 people are worth this price. Moreover, they have escaped from me several times. Who in this burial ground can kill them? It would be good enough if they could provide some information. At the same time, send someone to the palace and gather all the martial supremes here to set up the 9 Yin Hao Yuan Fiend formation and seal the entire burial place into the formation. Once you find the traces of those 2 people, you'll make sure they have no way out. Yes. Zhong Runyan broke out in a cold sweat. The 9 Yin Hao Yuan Fiend formation was the Blood God Palace's #1 fiendish formation and was set up by all the martial emperor powerhouses at the same time. Even a peak martial emperor would find it difficult to break out of the formation. Yet, such a formation was used to wait for 2 inexplicable people. He wondered what was so special about the 2 of them that the palace master attached so much importance to them. He didn't dare to delay and immediately flew away to announce his reward and send someone back to the sect to report. Meanwhile, the scion of the blood god hovered quietly in the sky, slowly closing his eyes to cultivate, covering the entire sky above the burial ground with his divine sense so that Yunshao would not accidentally escape. All the martial artists in the mountain range below could see him when they raised their heads. Each and every one of them revealed a strange and surprised expression. Soon, the bounty was announced through various means, and the video of Yunshao and Mo Xiaochuan spread as well. All of a sudden, all the warriors in the boneyard were in an uproar. A 1-star martial supreme and a 4-star martial emperor could get a 9th-tier mystic weapon as long as they provided the information. This made everyone's blood boil. Moreover, it was said that the 4-star martial emperor had been injured by the blood god and his strength had been greatly reduced. Hey, is this news reliable? As long as we provide a clue, we can get a 9th-tier profound armament? Nonsense. Look at the blood god in the air. He's personally watching over the battle. It's not like you didn't see the intense battle just now. Those 2 are really strong. The martial supreme is still fine, but I wonder how the martial sovereign who was injured by the blood god is doing. I don't think it'll be too good. You should have heard of the martial techniques of the blood god palace. Which one of them isn't extremely mean and evil? A casual hit from them can take half a life. Well, I don't care. If that martial emperor is still in his state, we will just provide him with information. If he is not in his state, then we will try to get the 3 9th-tier profound armaments. After the conversation, the 2 warriors headed toward the place where Yunshao had fallen. This situation quickly spread, and a large number of martial artists were in an uproar. They were all extraordinary people, at least with the strength of a martial honor. Those underlings below the martial honor level did not dare to join in the fun. Soon, a large number of experts arrived from the Blood God Palace and began to set up the entire boneyard. As the area was too large and the line was extremely long, even if they could not trap Yunshao, they would be able to catch him as soon as he rushed out of the boneyard. Things seem to be a little interesting. To be able to attract the attention of the blood god, those 2 must have something extraordinary on them. Its value should be above the 3 9th-grade profound armaments. In a hazy forest, the leaves rustled. Suddenly, a figure slowly emerged from the empty forest. The color of this person's body was the same as the fallen leaves, making it difficult to recognize him. His face was covered in a messy beard. No one knew how long he had been silent here, but he revealed his 2 buck teeth and muttered with a smile, "I've been in seclusion for 3 years. I didn't expect that someone would send me a treasure when I came out. This is my luck." In a valley, the calm water surface suddenly split open, and a flame directly soared into the sky. The entire lake split apart, and under the lake was actually a sea of fire. A ray of light jumped out and landed on the shore. Its wonderful figure proudly stood out, and a wisp of red muslin gently wrapped around the private part of its body, revealing a suspicious look. The woman's long hair was also like flames that reached behind her. She sniffed the air with her nose and murmured to herself in a moving voice, "Just now, my yellow spring hellflame actually had a subtle change. It seemed to have sensed another powerful flame. If I can get another mutated fire seed, I'll be able to completely cultivate the divine power. I'll go and take a look." As soon as she finished speaking, she had already appeared 100 meters away, turning into a fireball that whizzed past the boneyard. Not only was the spiritual chi in the burial place rich, but there were also all kinds of strange places and energy scattered everywhere. A large number of experts from all walks of life were living in seclusion there, and many of them were also alarmed by the battle and bounty of the blood god. Palace Master, the 9 Hao Yuan Fiend formation is ready. The range of the main array is within 1,000 miles. In order to ensure that we don't miss the net, I have also sent out the Martial Supreme experts in the sect to develop the main array and expand the range by another 3,000 miles. Zhong Runian carefully reported. Yes, a 9th-tier profound weapon is enough to attract anyone to attack. There are some old monsters lurking in the burial land that even I have to be somewhat afraid of. It would be great if we could attract them to attack. The scion of the blood god opened his eyes and said with a hint of ruthlessness, "Those two must fall into my hands." It was not just hatred. More importantly, it was the blood fiends. They had used the entire blood god palace's power to refine them. Their value was incalculable. "Don't worry, Palace Master," Zhong Runian said. "Even if those old monsters make a move, we'll still be able to catch those two with the help of this formation. I'm afraid of Yingluo." A trace of worry appeared on his face. "You mean the core passage?" The scion of the blood god's eyes narrowed. Cold sweat broke out on Zhong Runian's forehead and he hurriedly said, "That's right. As far as I know, although the core passage is guarded by the people of Red Moon City, there seem to be saints mixed in. If those two escape in that direction and are discovered by Red Moon City and killed, then we'll have to. We can't let them fall into the hands of the Red Moon City. The burial land is so large, and the chances of them going to the core passage are extremely low, but I can't take this risk. Take a group of experts with you to guard the path to the core passage, just in case." Zhong Runian hurriedly received the order and left. The blood god's face grew more and more solemn. This matter was getting out of hand, and if someone learned about the blood beast, it would certainly cause a great storm. He had to find Yunshao and the blood beast as soon as possible. At that moment, Yunshao had found a remote place to hide. The strange state of the burial land had aroused his great curiosity. Even his divine sense as an 8th-tier alchemist was suppressed and could not expand at all. Such a powerful divine sense restriction, this method is really unusual. Who set up this method? Yunshao frowned. Although he had heard of the boneyard, it was not very famous on the continent, so not many people in the eastern region knew about it. Just as he was about to check it carefully, his mind suddenly moved, and his expression changed. He hurriedly took out the Divine Realm tablet and rushed in with a flash of light. Inside the Divine Realm tablet, Mo Xiaochuan was howling in pain on the ground. His entire body had turned red, and a monstrous murderous aura was constantly rising from his body, gradually forming a phantom in the air. Yunshao frowned, and his face immediately darkened as he shouted angrily, "Evildoer, you actually dare to stir up trouble." He stretched out his hand and a golden claw mark immediately formed in the air. It grabbed the red shadow above Mo Xiaochuan tightly, letting it struggle and scream in fear. This shadow was the evil spirit that had been hiding in Mo Xiaochuan's body. Perhaps it had found an opportunity to reveal itself after Mo Xiaochuan had been injured by the scion of the blood god. Yunshao could not help but worry. He had thought that Mo Xiaochuan had only suffered a minor injury, but he did not expect that he could not even suppress the evil spirit. It seemed that the injury was far beyond his expectations.